press conference is to share. Ladies and gentlemen, the objective of this press conference is to shed light and issue a statement by the revitalized transitional government of national unity on the current political, security, and economic situation in South Sudan. The current political, security, and economic circumstances in the country, the region, and further afield require the government to engage the people through a situation statement. To that effect, it engaged the people through a situation. To that effect, it is appropriate for us to recognize that since gaining independence in July 2011, South Sudan continues to encounter a variety of challenges. The negative impact of the infamous internal conflict in December 2013, the collapse of August 2015 agreement, and the eruption of another conflict in 2016 remains to this day. Thus, the activities of most of the government institutions that have a direct bearing on the livelihood of the people remain weak. Despite the challenges that are directly related to our internal conflicts and weak institutions, the government continues to make steady progress in the implementation of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan 2018. That now that the electoral and constitution-making bodies are restructured and reconstituted, the government is fully committed to take the country for elections in December 2024 so that our people can elect leaders of their choice. Whilst the implementation of the peace agreement might be slow, the government has maintained peace and security across the country with the exception of a few hotspots largely characterized by communal violence, cattle rustling, and robbery. In the security sector, 6 army battalions have now been deployed between November and December 2023. To take care of the security situation in some of the hotspots around Malakal, Maridi, Reng, Wau, and Torit. Also, preparations are at the advanced stage for the deployment of the remaining Phase 1 forces to areas that are identified as insecure. Again, arrangements for the cantonment and training of Phase 2 of the remaining peace partners force are nearly completed, and that will provide enough forces to fully secure the country. Further, the deployment of the necessary unified force and other organized forces is in progress. With the deployment of these forces, the government will be in a stronger position to fully control its civilian population and protect their properties throughout the country. That is what the government aims to do in order to make South Sudan a conventional nation state. Dear citizens, as you are aware that the country is facing huge challenges in the economic sector, as we make this statement, the Ministry of Finance and Planning is unable to execute the financial year 2023-2024 budget to your satisfaction. The war in the sisterly neighbor, the Sudan, has greatly impacted on the economic situation in South Sudan, which, which relies mainly on oil production. The oil wells that were waterlogged by heavy floods over the past rainy seasons are still unrecovered, and the oil sector has not been able to increase production. Now the pipeline taking our crude to Port Sudan has experienced gelling process in numbers 1 and 5 stations, making it difficult for the crude oil to reach export market, that is to reach Port Sudan. Even if the crude were to reach Port Sudan, it would still not be possible to ship it for sale due to the threat of blockade of shipping in the Red Sea. So apart from the low production, there are physical difficulties confronting the oil sector. Unfortunately, the non-oil revenue sector is mainly, inter alia, dependent on imported goods. The National Revenue Authority is fragile, vulnerable, and unable to build in value-added tax, that is VAT, to increase tax proceeds. The combination of all these factors has seriously affected our resource envelope. The government is fully aware of the suffering of the citizens as a result of the financial crisis in the country, as outlined above. The cost of goods has skyrocketed, especially fuel and electricity. Although the dollar exchange rate is very high in the region and elsewhere, South Sudan has controlled it at SSP 1,000 to the dollar until recently. Even though South Sudan is a free market economy, nevertheless, this freedom should not be understood to be absolute. For the above, your government will control the market and the high hiking exchange rate of the dollar. The government must intervene to save its citizens from the jaws of the opportunists. The reversion of the dollar rate is around 1,500 South Sudanese pounds in the last few weeks, has just sharply increased market prices to rates our citizens cannot afford, and that is causing a lot of suffering. Clearly, the financial crisis causing extreme suffering in the country likely originate from poor fiscal performance due to lack of revenue diversification and dependence on oil proceeds. To resolve this fiscal crisis, the government is taking proactive measures to mobilize resources through streamlining collections, consolidating government finances, implementing public finance management reforms, and diversifying the economy. This approach will enable the government to meet its obligations, including clearing salary arrears, staying current, and funding general elections in 2024. In parallel, the Bank of South Sudan is strengthening its monetary policy framework and mobilizing foreign exchange in order to mobilize the market. These include maintaining restrictive monetary policy, to revisiting the deployment of monetary policy instruments and rebuilding foreign exchange reserves, 3, coordinating with the fiscal authorities to tighten the fiscal policy while mobilizing domestic revenue, and 4, mobilizing payment systems which addresses the issue of excess liquidity outside the banking system and supports electronic banking and other mobile platforms to foster financial inclusion. As we head towards elections in December 2024, the government is working closely with its key partners, namely the United Nations, UNMISS, African Union, IGAD, and the organs created by the revitalized agreement to ensure a smooth transition to democratic governance. With the UN Security Council, we are implementing and responding to 5 benchmarks imposed on South Sudan under paragraph 18 of the UN Security Council Resolution number 2683, 2023 on arms embargo and sanctions. The meetings have gone well so far, and our relationship with the UN has been cordial. We hope that sooner rather than later, the UN will find a space to lift the arms embargo as well as the sanctions on South Sudan so that the government can now arm its newly deployed necessary unified forces. On support to South Sudan with the electoral and constitution-making process, the government has established a government tripartite AU, IGAD, and UN task force to spearhead that process. The government has also been working with the Human Rights Commission for South Sudan in Geneva, Switzerland. Despite South Sudan having made enormous progress on human rights issues, the government is experiencing a difficult relationship with the Commission, that is the Human Rights Commission. To that end, the position of the government of South Sudan on extension of the mandate of the Commission on Human Rights in South Sudan was put forward as follows. 1, the government requests the Commission to share evidence and names of the individuals and entities accused of human rights violations so that the government could evaluate the evidence with a view of addressing them through accountability process. 2, the government accepts that the Commission to monitor and report human rights situation, but its powers of investigation should be relinquished to the government and UNMISS. 3, the government rejects the Commission's intrusion and expansion of its powers into monitoring implementation of the RXS, a power which is conferred upon the RGMEC. 4, if the government position is accepted, the government is willing to accept the extension of the Commission for a period of 1 year under item 10. With this situation statement, we hope the government has clarified some of the key areas on the current situation in the country. The government will continue to improve on the situation, strengthen its institutions, maintain peace and security, and take the country to elections in 2024.